here to talk about the A-Footprint project, which is a very large European Framework 7 project, which lasted 4 years, which has just finished, and we've been working on this realm of bespoke orthotic devices, mostly foot orthosis and ankle foot orthosis, and hopefully you will find it interesting. So that's the project acronym. So foot and ankle foot orthotic devices. You will see many pictures later on, and the ship is what I found when I was looking for a flagship. So basically we've got the flagship project recognition from the EC, which basically means that our project officer thinks that we did a good job. So we're quite happy with that. So first I'm going to give you a little bit of background, not about additive manufacturing, because you've probably heard that a dozen times today, but about orthotics and prosthetics, because usually people are not familiar with that at all. Then I'll start to look at the project in a little bit more detail and take you to this integrated solution, which looks complicated because it is complicated, but then it'll get easier after that. I'll also show you some selected results about things that we developed during the project, which I think that you might find interesting. It's the total project is too big to present kind of in all of its entirety. We would be here several days. And yeah, demonstration event, which was one of the biggest events, biggest activities in the project, and we organized that in Newcastle about half a year ago. And then I'll just give you a quick summary of the official key results that the project achieved. So orthotics are basically external support devices. You may have seen people with orthopedic shoes or some kind of orthotic inserts. These are usually to kind of redistribute loads on your foot to give you support when you walk around. And usually people wear these under their clothes, so they don't want to show you that you are wearing these things, because no one wants to be seen as being disabled. But sometimes they are absolutely vital kind of for your day-to-day activities. So yeah, this is an ankle foot orthosis, and these two are orthopedic insoles. And you can find insoles in all sorts of sizes and shapes. But we're looking at really treating people with serious mobility, disability issues, not really something you can put in your sports shoe. Prosthetics, then again, are, let's say, replacement parts for the human body. You can have internal prosthetics or implants, you can have external devices, and I won't really get into that, but let's say the industry and the manufacturing methods are very similar in these two applications. But I'll just focus on the orthotics in this presentation. So this is kind of the traditional process. So basically you start off with seeing the patient. You take a plaster cast off, let's say, your leg, could be your torso, could be any number of things. And this is the negative impression of the body part. We get that in the factory with an order form. We fill that with plaster. We remove the negative to get the positive. We polish that off and make possibly some corrections. Then we basically vacuum form polypropylene around it and basically cut the shell out of the positive, and then finish that, add straps, cushioning, whatever, and there you go. And so this is kind of the oldie process that has been around for a long time. Let's say the state-of-the-art process where we were before the project would be this. So you see the patient again, you do a scan, a direct digital scan, you do CAD design based on that. You could then, I mean, this has been done in various case studies, research projects, etc. Do the manufacturing straight away, and there you go, just fit and finish. And so in terms of kind of all the clever stuff you could do with additive manufacturing, you can, we've done a little bit before the project, so basically adjusting the thickness of the material of the device to generate different functional properties, and playing with textures and different sorts of structures. So kind of this is where we were at the start of the project. And so the project itself started in September 2009, ends officially this September. We had the closing off meeting just a couple of weeks ago. We had 11 partners. The coordinator was Glasgow Caledonian University. Then there was Peacocks. We also were involved in the technical coordination of the project. We have other orthotic SME partners involved. We have other technical partners, also SMEs involved in the project, and then Materialize, the large industry partner, and then academic partners across Europe. So this is the gang. Then the official objectives of the project. So improve basically the quality of the prescriptions, fits and functionality. If you've ever had one of these things, you know just how important that is. Decrease the lead time from about 2 weeks to about 48 hours. Quite ambitious. And then, cost-efficient, kind of integrated solution. And obviously to demonstrate all of this. And basically for me, this whole project was about this. So how do we bring the strengths of additive manufacturing into these devices? How do we use all the analytical tools? How do we use all the potential of let's say functional integration and all that? So this is a little bit the structure of the project. So you have patient data collection, work package 2 mostly. Then you have various means of analyzing that data, work package 3 and 4, design and manufacturing, so CAD and CAM, and then testing and patient trials. I won't really go into this much deeper than that because it's probably not that interesting. So this is the integrated process developed in this in the project, and basically we start off again with clinical assessment, moving on to a very detailed biomechanical analysis and really motion capture of the patients. And we complement this with MRI and CT data sets. So we have a very, very comprehensive set of input data for each of the patients. Then we obviously have 3D surface scanning as well. But basically you can reconstruct the skeleton from this information in a very large amount of detail. And that's exactly what was done by anybody, one of the technical partners here. And they've created the most detailed foot model, dynamic foot model for a human body that's been ever made. Then that model can then be taken to another modeling system called Medymo, where you can basically connect that with an FE model of an insole. And that FE and optimize basically the insole to that anatomy, to that movement, to that pathology. Then that can be taken to a CAD system and the insole manufactured that way, or the AFO manufactured that way. Obviously this is all quite time consuming and complicated, and the idea was not to develop a system like this for each and every patient, but to use these complex data sets to create, to basically make sure that all these models and systems work very well, and then see if we can simplify it so that you wouldn't need to take all of that data for each and every patient. So this is kind of where we got to at the end of the process, which is, okay, you take a scan of the foot, you take a pressure measurement of the person, walking or running as in this case, then you basically feed that information into the dynamic model. This will then give you basically an optimized output, which you can then proceed to manufacture. So basically, this is an example of an insole with different hardnesses and different parts of the insole, which can then be manufactured with, for example, the Connex machine. Obviously, there's quite a few issues with this, and this is not a commercially ready process at this stage, but you can just kind of see where it's all going. So this is basically well beyond anything that was around before the project. So I think we're quite chuffed about all of that. Then now we're getting into kind of selected results, kind of little bits and bobs from here and there. We looked into sensor integration, and this is an iButton sensor integrated into an insole, and this is a very useful tool for activity monitoring. And if we manage to improve this idea even further, you could then have a sensor in each insole, and looking at the difference of the temperatures, you could possibly predict inflammation. If you can predict inflammation, you can then go and see a doctor, and possibly you can avoid amputation, which is a very big deal if you have diabetes. Then new orthotic concepts. We made all sorts of crazy things: AFOs, foot orthosis, different processes, different materials. Basically, the SLS insoles are, from my perspective, quite interesting because the material is very good for actual final use. Orthotics, you manufacture it, you finish it, you give it to the patient, you don't have to do anything else. Then the low-cost systems that we looked at as well have also actually become quite interesting because you use that low-cost process to create the shape that you need for that patient, and then you use other materials to basically get the material properties, the stiffness, whatever you need. So that's actually opens up all sorts of interesting possibilities for on-site manufacturing. But then does the clinician want to do that, or does he still want to just fill an order form and see the next patient? That's a big question mark. We did we basically made a CAD system, well, Materialist made a CAD system, and for foot orthotic design and ankle foot orthotic design. And the ankle foot orthotic design was something quite novel because if you look at what's out there, you can only basically make corrections to the positive, which is the gray bit here. But now we just mark some landmarks. We can design the outline of the AFO directly on that, and basically just generate the shell from there, and we can adjust the properties of the shell with, well, there's a handful of parameters we can adjust, and then obviously that can be manufactured directly or used as a starting point for more advanced design. Okay, obviously the most interesting result for us, for Peacocks, was the factory, which was built in our factory. We call it the prototype factory. And basically this is just a quick outline of that factory. So you have a CAD office, you have where you basically do your design work. When that's done, you move on to prepping your builds into the production. You actually then make the parts. That's the easy bit. You just start it and you wait. Once the machine is done, we obviously do the breakout. So we get the cake out of the machine. The cake contains the unused powder plus the sintered parts. And so in this last photo, you can see the part over there, the person's holding the part, and then the unsintered powder just floating around everywhere. And that can be recycled and used again and again. After that, we basically just take the parts into a bead blasting chamber and make sure that we blast away all the powder that's stuck in the parts. And basically after that, you're kind of good to go, or you can put the parts in a tumbling machine, which is also, you just put the parts in and leave them in for a few hours, and this will improve the surface finish quite a bit if you want to do that, if you need to do that. So this is a kind of just a layout of all the equipment that we've got there. So we got the machine in the center, we got CAD system scanning, we have the post-processing equipment, especially with our high-tech material recycling solution, and yeah, a tumbler basically. We have some quality assessment equipment so that we can measure the powder we use and we can measure the parts we produce. So basically, in every build, we have some test parts which we measure, so we know exactly kind of what we've just made. And also we measure the powder coming out of that machine, and we've characterized the powder up to a certain amount of recycles, so that we know that, okay, can we still do another cycle for this powder? And this makes it kind of fairly cost efficient, and also we can trace back if there's a problem with something. We can go back in time and kind of look at what we made in that build and what could have gone wrong. So we're quite happy with that quality system, and we've also characterized a number of materials for the SLS process, and well, for low-cost systems as well. The usual suspects from 3D in this case, also polypropylene and some Exceltech materials, which actually performed quite well. This is the, let's say, the standard Duraform nylon 12 polymer, which is quite brittle, and it has isotropy issues. But then if you go to this other material, which is nylon 11, you get basically you get rid of the brittleness and the isotropy, which is great, and it's cheaper. So that's what we use. The demonstration event was a big deal for us, but it's yeah, may or may not be interesting to you. I'll just run through this quite quickly. We had it about 6 months ago at the Centre for Life in Newcastle. We had basically let's say, a technical part with presentations. You know what that's about. Some demonstrations with various bits of equipment. Question and answer session. Yeah, that's some trophies for Jim Woodburn, the project coordinator, and Professor Kenny Delgado, who chaired the session that day. We had some machines actually at the Centre for Life. I'm sure that you recognize that particular piece of equipment. And after this part of it, we basically put everybody in a bus and headed off to Benfield to our factory to basically look at the traditional manufacturing, which I showed you in the beginning, and then the SLS manufacturing, the prototype factory, which I also showed you, so I'm not going to show that to you twice. And good times were had by all. Feedback was also quite positive. Someone would have wanted to be on board from the onset, and kind of the potential for to design new types of devices was also apparent in our project from the feedback we received, and the design topic comes up again and again and again, like in the previous two presentations. Yeah, feedback, excellent, good. There was one person who didn't like it at all, but you always have one of those. And new orthotic products, new designs, that was really the thing that popped up again and again. So these are the main official results of the project. So basically I didn't really explain the database system to you that much, but this is basically to communicate all sorts of patient-related data between all these different companies, universities. So that was a major effort from Fontis. Then the CAD design system from Materialize for foot orthosis and AFO design. Basically this contains all of the musculoskeletal modeling, all the optimization work, and that was possibly the single most impressive result, at least from my perspective, of the entire project. And then obviously the manufacturing itself, setting up the factory, and also doing the quality, developing the quality framework, in the first stage of the project we kind of characterized a number of additive manufacturing processes and ended up basically selecting the SLS system, and then obviously the low-cost systems, to kind of look at both sides of the spectrum. We just didn't look at the middle bits. Impact of the project: we've had 84 seminar presentations, which has to be some kind of a record for EU projects. 10 scientific projects, also a very big number for EU projects. Conference papers, exhibitions in different conferences across Europe, and we had 2 dedicated project stands also. And we've had some good press good publicity from the BBC at the end of last year in BBC Scotland and BBC Northeast, I think it's called. That's my presentation, and I hope you got some idea what we did in the footprint project. I was trying to kind of emphasize the, let's say, the products and the real actual applications, rather than, let's say, the software engineering and all that. That's obviously, there's been a lot of that going on in the background as well. And we are continuing some of this work in other EU projects that have also started this September. And also the prototype factory is no longer a prototype factory. It is actually used for commercial production of foot orthoses. So I think we might have some time for a few questions.
How long do you think before we see everybody using them, before this becomes widespread?
So the question was about how long would it take for this type of manufacturing to become more widespread, and I would say that it's kind of it's a good question, and I think we're very early in this kind of curve that you've seen before. I think we're quite early on that curve, and cost is a main issue. Materials are another issue because they're not the same materials as the industry is used to using. Initially it will be very specific products for very specific, let's say, pathologies. But then when people get more comfortable with using the technology, more applications will emerge, I'm sure of that. But it will not be kind of the beginning and the end of the industry. It's going to become another tool in the orthotist or the prosthetist's toolbox. So in some cases you might still have to use the good old-fashioned processes. In another case you might go for the milling-based approach, but in more and more cases you will be able to use additive manufactured solutions. But we're just very early in that stage, and I mean, as in this conference, and also if you follow the industry, there's something new there every day, and I mean, who knows what pops up tomorrow. So with that disclaimer, I would say that it will slowly spread.
Theoretically, if these desktop printers get better, could people have a prescription and print their own off at home? Is that possible in the future?
Interesting. It's haven't thought of that, to be perfectly honest. So thank you for that. It's maybe someday, but at the moment, the machines, the materials, the ease of use, just making sure that what you print won't actually harm you, it's just not there yet. But I would say that it's things could change. It's as long as there is sufficient kind of clinical assessment, and whoever the clinical responsible person is, they have confidence that you can actually print that thing, then it could be possible. But you probably need to sign a ton of all sorts of papers. Yeah.
Mention a little bit about the cost and how, what sort of time frame would it bring it down to something that's competitive?
Do you mean for individual products, or basically you'd be looking at overnight production, because you want your lead time to be as short as possible. So you want to get your machine set during the working day. You set it off as you go home, and then first thing in the morning or at some point during the next day, you're ready to take the cake out and get the new build in. And so basically then you need some time for your internal, let's say, customer services processes. We'll track the orders, quality control, all of that. So kind of it'll be, I think if you really set it up, 3 days minimum. Yeah, the cost of making it, that's a tricky one. It depends on how you set it up. I can't really give you an answer to that. There's some research being done out there that have looked at the costs, and it's in the very high end of the current range of products that you can buy, and basically that's where it's sold at, and it's with the lower cost solutions, things could change, but then the person on site has to actually do the manufacturing, so it's a little bit different. Okay, thank you very much.